it was basically conceptualized from the blocks of marble and limestone that were quarried from the mines, and it had the clean cubic shape of the blocks that were mined. And the key aspect on which the concept was focused on was getting available raw materials which are easily available, ease of production so that it can be easily replicated in industry, and using traditional Indian craftsmanship as one of the aspects. And if you can go to the next sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so initially, the issue which was identified was the roof structure, which was, there were some structural issues with the roof, and there was not enough details to discuss how the roof the roof is going to stand on its own. So I have worked on that, and first I would like to also draw your attention towards the lattice work. Initially, the lattice work was very traditional in its design, and it gave an aesthetic of the traditional jali work that are there in the Rajasthani stone art. But now I have tried to incorporate some modernism into it and made it more fluid so that the eye can travel across the lattice, and there are some dynamism in its architecture and appearance. So the next sheet, please. Yeah, the joinery details, there were no questions or concern regarding the other joinery details between the blocks and the lattices. So they are as they were previously. There are no changes in that. The last sheet, please. Yeah, and this is the joinery detail of the roof. So now I have introduced a bit of steel tension members which will hold the lattice panels on L-shaped sections, on L sections. And these L sections will be attached to the stone blocks by gusset plates, which will be again attached to the stone blocks via epoxy resin. And the L channels would be bolted to the gusset plate, and the bracket which will thus be created between the four stone blocks at the corner of four corners of the roof will support the lattices. So this is the major improvement and the main query that was addressed in the updated design, that the roof is now relatively more stable than the previous design that was envisioned. And from the view, you can, if we can go back to the first sheet, ma'am, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from the view, you can see that the new design of the lattice has created a bit of dynamism in the overall appearance of the stone pavilion. And this is one of the things that we as a group had discussed. And there were a lot of ideas regarding the lattice as well. And in fact, one of the best ideas which I got, but I was unable to incorporate it because it was basically not visible in the software that I was using, and that is that the lattices, the openings of the lattices are to be bounded by an outline, a groove of the outline of the shapes, so that there is a continuity of a web-like structure, which will it will create an effect of continuity throughout the blocks. And though the panels are separate, and probably there will be gaps between them for easy assembly and disassembly, but still the appearance of continuity will prevail in it. So yeah, that appearance I have not been able to create in the 3D rendering as of yet, but that was one of the major ideas that came out of the discussion in our group. So this is the project. This is the improvement that I have done in the project.
Yeah, thank you, Surendra, for showing us these improvements. I think from the beginning I liked this work because it's a very poetic reactualization of what we have in history. And it's a wonderful update, and also the mixture of two stones really leads to a very interesting aesthetic. I'm not a structural engineer. I don't know if you have those guys at IIT Roorkee to challenge them with the question, which is a bit related to cantilevers in your proposal, because the cornerstones, they sit on walls, but actually where they have to bear the load, they are hanging in the air. So this might lead to a very strong solicitation of the anchoring in the corner where the walls stand. So you get momentum, you know, and stone is a bit vulnerable in those cases, especially when it's attached in only 3 or 4 points. So these points, they might break. And I think it's perhaps safer to imagine something where you can introduce the load into the walls directly, bypassing this cantilever situation. So this would be my only reserve to this very nice proposal. Thank you.
Okay, Professor. So I will try to run it through some structural engineers which we have in our institute, and probably explore more options if that is going to be a problem, the cantilever aspect. So I can explore some more options to stabilize it.
That is in Rajasthan was not. Thank you, Surya. Madeen was suggesting that we take the group presentation, so there are more people who are working on the similar idea like yours, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that Philip?
I assume either Oat or I am continuing, I assume.
Should I stop the screen share then?
Yeah, we will have to do that because it's a single PDF, one for Indians and one for German students. So
Okay.
if we are now going group wise and they have to present, we will have to stop sharing. Yeah.
I'll stop this share then.
Okay.
So should I continue maybe, or?
Yes, I think Philip and then Ort will continue, and then we can quickly have a group, see if things are common or if you want to find shared.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I will just quickly go through. I guess by now all you remember that I had this big piece of red sandstone that was cut into 3 slabs, basically, which are stacked on top of each other and which are like separated by little spacers. And one question was on how to further refine this contrast of the flat surfaces that are cut by the saw and the more rocky or bumpy ones, which comes from the extraction by the wedges during the mining process. And then Soyendu suggested me one book on ornament, and also Professor Zova suggested me 2 books last week. One which was called The Nature of Ornament by Kent Bloomer, and the other one, The Mediation of Ornament by Oleg Grabar. And what I found interesting is Kent Bloomer defined as a definition, ornament comes from the Latin word ornamentum, and he says in a modern interpretation that means to confer grace upon some object of ceremony. And in Oleg Grabar's definition, he said any decoration that has no referent outside of the object on which it is found. So one notion I found interesting here was the one of grace or beauty, so that you get, if you apply an ornament onto an architecture, it might just be visually appealing, or there's a certain beauty to it. And on the other hand, what interested me was, as I wanted to show these different processes that are in the cultural activity of working with stones. So you can see the extraction process of mining, you can see the flat surfaces that contrast this from the cutting with the saw. And now there comes this third refinement, which is the CNC milling. And what interested me here was the process of CNC milling when you define like a 0 level for the to the machine, which it starts. It can be, I thought it would be interesting to apply this to the surface which is cut by the saw, so you really have this flat surface, but also apply it to the more bumpy kind of surface that comes from the mining process. And I assume that when you define the highest point on this surface as the 0 and the ornament is cut by the CNC mill to a certain point, some areas on the stone which are deeper, they won't be touched in the end by the CNC mill. So the ornament on this untreated bumpy surface, it won't show completely. And I think then again, this is somehow revealing how the CNC mill is working. And the ornament that I applied right now is, I found it in a book called The Grammar of Ornament by Owen Jones. It's accessible on the National Museum of Scotland webpage. And in 1856, he collected ornaments I think for printing purposes. And there are some panels with what he described as Indian ornaments. But I think also the ornamentation could be open to discussion. And I think, Smirti, you mentioned last time that it would be interesting to see the compression forces in the little spacers, because we have this big rock on top of the two slabs, which weighs approximately 10 tons. And I mean, I just looked into the compression forces of, for example, beech wood. And even if you just distribute like this 10 tons onto the 4 spacers, the compression strength of even if it was just a wooden spacer would be sufficient. But of course, it could also be in contrast to the red sandstone. It could be another stone, for example, maybe from the collection that we have on the webpage. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. I think we can take odd and then we can discuss as a group the subtle nuances regarding the design.
I am sorry, I don't prepare a presentation for today, but I have some drawings and plans. So, can everybody see?
Yes.
So my pavilion should serve as an exhibition space to promote stone, and I make some modification in it. In the middle, I have a water basin with a hole in the roof where the light can shine in the pavilion. The water basin is used to design a tour, and the wall accord with each that I use to display the stone. And I have simplified the pavilion in its construction. I have large wall elements and in total 22 pieces of stone that all fit together like a Tetris or Lego model. The elements are decorated with artificial joints to create an illusion of a pavilion made of silver stone. Like you can better see them. So, and yeah, the waterfall from the roof in the basin, and then from the basin to the outside, thanks to a canal system in the base of the pavilion. You can see it better in this plan, like from the roof, and the little canal in the base. So yet it's important to discuss and work more on the construction details, because I don't think that it's real work in the reality. And I'm not so sure about the water system, but I think it can interesting to have a more team in this pavilion with light and water, and make a good exhibition place, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, Madeen, you suggest that we now open for a group discussion regarding these three prototypes?
Yes, I think if it's possible.
Yeah.
But,
I see slightly different approaches, although, yeah, there are some similarities, at least regarding certain aspects. So, while Suryendu is he's treating, this interplay of lattice and solid plane, so it's like a mass and void, and then there are punctures, and he has designed the structural system for the corners separately, and the intermittent roofing system on the gusset plate and I beams running separately. What Philip is doing, he's trying to utilize the compressive strength of stone, and he has already checked those. Like the last time I had this concern, how the load transfer happens through the in between sections of stone. So he's largely working at that scale. And what Odd is doing, yes, she has a sort of similar form development like Suryendu, but she's trying to incorporate water as an element, is what I understood, although she has not detailed it out. Yeah, so yes, there are subtle, sort of nuances which can be talked about, but I'm not really seeing them as like comparable to each other. So as per Odd's work, I see it's a very interesting idea that you are trying to create a sensory experience, and take the consideration of water as a natural element. But the only thing that I'm concerned is, if we want to take this prototype to production and execute it on site, then we'll have to have a really detailed out system how this water as an element is integrated, because we may not be able to do it on the site, as and when. So does it have an inbuilt system, or a sort of a small pump and a small sort of water source attached to it, and how the filtration happens and all those aspects? So it is a great idea, but it may get a little complicated when you execute it. One of the students here also, she was trying to work on a meditation pavilion. She could not complete her idea, that's why she's not presenting today. So she was also wanted to have the sound of water, and see water as one of the main elements which creates those sensory experiences in a pavilion. But again, the main issue was, how do you execute it when it's a small scale pavilion, which will also be part of a travel exhibition, the way we are at least hoping that it gets done. So that is specifically regarding to your prototype, my comment. And regarding Odd's work, Philip's work, what I found interesting was the surface integrated craft, or the detail at the ornamentation level that he brought in this time, which we didn't see last time. So that's very interesting, and it's also, he was talking about the hand chisels and saws, and how we can still work with the craftspersons, working like handcrafted details, not just using machines. So that's interesting there, but I would still suggest if you can have a little discussion with the structural designer and can we substantiate? I'm not sure, I'm saying this for everyone, like Indian students as well as German students. Can we really substantiate through force calculation and, you know, sort of a number that we can calculate with the help of structural designers and engineers? Like, this is the compressive force, and that's how, you know, we are taking care of the entire structural system. So that's something which I think all of us can probably add as another layer of information. Or when we have a discussion with Mukul or Kiran, we can have a slight discussion with them also from the point of view of execution and making these prototypes.
Yeah, thank you, Smriti, for your comments. I would like to add perhaps something which is more related to why we speak about groups now. Probably we will not be able to come up with 30 pavilions. Mukul and Trivedi, they will probably refuse to build all of them. Absolutely. I mean, I would be happy to see them all because I really like the work and I'm completely enthusiastic about the results so far. However, if we take advantage of this wonderful webinar and bring the two groups, the Indian and the German, together, then we might try to identify topics. And I see possible topics coming up out of these three wonderful designs. So the first one of Suryendra is a bit an engineering one. So you can use stone according to stone, but you can make out of stone something which is, well, quite challenging and more related to civil engineering. For instance, combining stone and metal and introducing sophisticated details and also milling techniques. So high-tech engineering would be perhaps the surprise behind the stone. And in art, I think this is more a tectonic solution, using stone as a kind of piles of stone and putting columns there where the load comes down. But this is, I would say, a more traditional way, avoiding high tech. And it's in a sense also classical. I mean, also the kind of cube, and inside you have the display. And what I like, or what I could see as a topic in Philip's work, is the contrast between the roughness of the block and the refinement of the ornament. And what is really surprising that he, in the end, he puts in the refined ornament, but it remains imperfect. So it's a play with perfection and imperfection. You can achieve something with milling techniques, and then you get these rough surfaces of the block and all the work remains incomplete. So this is a figure of thought which we have in 18th century Europe, where people try to contemplate ruins, or they speak about fragments and so on. And exposing the roughness together with the ornament is kind of going back and forth in the attempt, to achieve a masterpiece, but then things fail. And this kind of failure, introducing it, is a very humanistic thought. I mean, that you try hard, but the matter is stronger than your thought. I mean, the process of materialization of an idea is very interesting. And I think it's, of course, every one of you started with a strong idea and puts it into matter. So when we now try to go the next step and try to identify cohesion in groups or making it productive, this discussion, then I think it would be good to discuss topics or which would be good for you. I mean, to go on further. So, not as a selection, but as conversation on possible, well, or on common goals, perhaps. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Axel. Yeah, I think it is pretty much possible, but they will have to now then spend and invest time from that perspective, that they work as a group and try to channelize the similar approaches and come up with then, with a common ground. Yeah. What do you suggest, Suryendu and Philip? What would be a common takeaway if you have to work as a team?
It's up to the team, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I think. Then they will have to now invest some time in coming together, and then they will have to think about these commonalities and approaches which could help them develop an idea that has some common ground.
But how was the group constituted? Is that your choice? Do you see each other as a group, or?
Yes, we actually we discussed and we thought that we had similar issues in our design.
So then you might know better.
Yeah, yes. I think we will have a discussion regarding that, how we can reach a common ground and create something out of each of our individual approaches. And yes, we will have that discussion and we will create something out of it.
So, I mean, if I understood correctly, that means now we synthesize like one pavilion out of the three, or?
I think this is difficult. I mean, it's not about compromising or, but well, I think it's a dialogue. When you wonder which topic would you give a privileged position. I mean, I can see many topics and they can all be developed. Yeah, I think it would also mean perhaps to step back a bit from your authorship and your individual design and think how these aspects can contribute to something common. I mean, it's a means to get you into a longer dialogue. That's what I think.
It is going to be a long dialogue, I guess.
Yeah, but it does. Yeah, it is a fascinating premise. Probably, it could be. It would be wise to just take a step back from your initial ideas, which of course you feel this onus because you have been really spending a lot of time on it. But maybe just come together as a group and try to synthesize. What if, like, Suryendu's sort of very finessed and engineered planes or surfaces get somewhere hybridized or mixed with that raw rustic surface treatment of Phillips, and there is certain element that Odd wants to bring in, and maybe you could conceptualize something altogether, keeping this idea of ornamentation as common, because that's what you are trying to reflect, Suryendu, through lattice work and the motifs that have been highlighted, which are pretty much sort of 3D and volumetric, although it did not come out so well in the drawing. You already told me the limitation of the software, but you did think of it as a very chiseled motif, which is pretty much ornamental and volumetric and 3D, because it would have that kind of depth. And of course, something related to surface integration and building craft is what Philip is also working on. And in terms of form, Odd is thinking of, sort of an enclosure that Surya is also thinking about. So yes, I think you could take a step back, come together and have an interesting dialogue and see where, as an idea, this design solution can go how far. And
don't be afraid of it. In offices, when you are in a team and you have to work on a competition, I mean, it's people bring in ideas and then there's a discussion, and in the end, perhaps the best is to throw away your ideas and just to try something new. I mean, it's feel free just to do so. I think you will gain something out of it, I'm sure. Perhaps one last comment. I mean, the question of ornament is very interesting, and you should also ask yourself, where does it sit, the ornament? And I would say that in many cases, ornamentation is like, you know, an encounter of, or it's perhaps a detail which is expanded into something shiny, more visible and luxurious. But from the beginning, it's a problem of fitting or a discontinuity. So when you put ornaments, then it's something which is in the same time hiding and revealing. So it hides the discontinuity by something very expensive and gorgeous, you know, where you look at. But if you look at it, then you don't see the problem of the fitting. So perhaps there is also a question to all of you: where would you place the ornament? Is it everywhere, or is it in a specific location in the construction? So it's what Oleg Grabar said. Well, the mediation means that the ornament takes you from one point to the next by following all the meanders and all the, you know, the kind of complicated, intricate articulation inside the ornament. So it leads you from A to B in a complicated way, you know, like arabesque, where you follow the margin, and this marginal thing becomes important somehow. So, but it is still, well, it is inside the text of the whole thing. It becomes a subtext, and perhaps in your construction, it might be interesting to think about.
Yeah, just to add briefly, Philip, you might want to refer to the book which I shared with Nadine and Excel and Andrea. It talks about stone ornamentation in India, and just like how Excel was explaining, there was an eye movement, and it makes us shift our attention from, you know, one point to the another, because the articulation on the surface does that to us. So those can be interesting details. Also, in terms of the placement, like you know, what is the eye level and what is the cone of vision? If I'm standing on the ground, till what height am I able to see those details, because it is done in that scale and proportion. So if you're interested in any detail like that, there's a book that I shared. I can probably put it in group also. You may like it. It is on Stonecraft and Architecture of India.
Yeah, also Philip mentioned Owen Jones, and here comes all the colonial history in. I mean, of Englishmen collecting, you know, what is supposed to be Indian, or, I mean, and well, it is perhaps a misunderstanding also of what is Indian, and there's a collection, and these collections, they started in mid 19th century. And you of course, you all know these pattern books and so on, and they were exposed in London and so on. But I think it's already a synthesis of things that Owen Jones and others saw in India. Ferguson, for instance, they all collected these ornaments, but
yeah,
it could be also interesting to look at this history again.
Yeah, in fact, there is also a link between what you do on timber as a material, and then how you translate, you know, from the paintings to timber to stone. So, yeah, even Lockwood did a lot of work in the Oriental arts. So that's interesting, yeah. And yeah, and you know what, Excel, I'm already thinking our third webinar in the series could very much be on ornamentation in stone. This is what I thought about. Yeah, okay. Okay, should we proceed with the next group?
I maybe just want to raise or maybe come back to one topic of the modus operandi of, because I find it at least extremely difficult to, I mean, if we didn't have this situation, we would all meet in a summer academy and we would engage in 1 or 2 weeks and really come up with a common design. But I think maybe I'm just speaking for myself. I don't know how it is for you, so Yendu, or I think it's really, really difficult to, we can give a good feedback to each other, that works really well. But when it comes to maybe start designing something in common, I find it at least really difficult right now.
I have a comment to that. I think I would work very pragmatically, like how you would do as in an office, as Axel explained. It's as I know from big offices like Herzog de Meuron, Chipperfield, or those guys, they make within their offices, they make design teams for each competition. So at the beginning, they develop a series of ideas, and then they either go forward with one of them, but sometimes it's a fusion of ideas, and they develop, continue further with a fusion of things that have been developed. This is a process, and as I said last time to our students, that we should archive what we have now, but then go now to the second stage, where we do this fusion, or we select one of those what we have already and continue as a team and see it like a competition, you know. And then we have to come up with one idea that's the most functional, and that it contains the main ideas. In your case, maybe the handling of ornament, and so on. And I would actually, we did this. Maybe it's useful to look at this chart that Gerion developed, and what I usually do also, what I learned at offices, that we, when we compare the ideas, we do plus minus, putting a judgment, making a judgment on our ideas, what's plus and what's minus within this idea, and then we continue. And I think it's just a process, and it doesn't mean that you now have to design something new. You could also just continue if you agree that one has the better idea and is the most sufficient, maybe has less material, it can be transported well. Maybe this could be also an important issue for you to choose which one you want to go ahead with. Do you understand what I mean? You have to look at it more pragmatically, what you have now, and it's more like a competition now to get. You want to get this one thing built, right? So now you so work on that.
Yeah, maybe they could have a discussion amongst themselves, and then also try to bring in a structural designer, and maybe the expert could tell them that this prototype works well from the point of view that it has to be executed and it has to travel as an exhibition, and maybe they have something to really comment on the execution part and help you go ahead with a synthesis, or probably choosing one out of the three. I don't know how to put in it. Maybe, of course, disheartening because you worked on your own idea.
Yeah, so, but I think there is a big advantage of group intelligence, and I also wanted to thank Gerion for this chart. I think it's really helpful. And it shows you can get a lot of intelligence out of it. So just take it as a challenge to get in contact with others, to understand something on how can you work with stone, what is the potential, and this is very much the goal of our a common endeavor, that, you know, it's a bicultural perspective. We mentioned ornaments, we mentioned technological traditions, which are also different, craftsmanship, machinery, and so on. So if you take the whole chart, and I would really like to invite you to look at this, and it's really nicely done. You can, of course, also point to other subjects you find in the chart. I mean, you are not restricted as a group to stick with it. So again, we don't question the intelligence of your individual authorship. This is really wonderful, but just take it as an opportunity to get into contact with others about what stone can be, and is it sustainable, and how much energy is introduced, and how about this difference of refinement and roughness and so on. So it's just an invitation, so please.
I would like to suggest a point over here. If a SWOT can be done based on the industry expert, if an interaction can happen, these three together, there are three design, and if they could pick up some common parameters and do a SWOT with respect to how the prototype is going to be built. So maybe the industry expert can give them an insight which we might miss out into the dimensions of its integration, its assembly, its disassembly, and it's the travel part, and maybe the economy part also. So that would could lead them to finalize what kind of design they could come up together from the three, the one design which they could carry forward, if that is possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we can do that. We can first let them discuss amongst themselves, you know, and then we can then bring an industry expert and do a sort of a pros and cons and analysis of what the prototype is about. And then whichever is possible to get executed, yeah, with some modification, they can work on it.
Yes, there could be some aspect of all three designs, and then there could be the final design which comes out. So there could be, these three could be seen as the three parallel iterations or a literal iterations of a design. And then what is the final iteration which comes out, which goes to the prototype making into the industry? Because that will be also one of the major aspect in the next phase when it goes into the execution. So maybe they go into that direction, from ideation into the execution, more on those aspects, uh, highlighting them also.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure they'll figure out something. We can get on with the next group then.
Who is it?
I have mentioned the groups. Just a moment.
Alexandra. And who are you? I mean, if I look at the chart, Alexandra is.
Yes, I work with Pranjal, or I
yes.
meeting with him. Yeah. But maybe I would suggest that we can look at the project on this chart, so we can at the moment speak about it and maybe compare a little. So this is, I think, what we made it for.
Mm. Shall I share it?
Yeah.
Or what do you want me to do? I think we need to also then maybe specify the groups again, because now you have overlaps. Some people are in two groups. So then maybe in the next step, we need to rethink again the groups and make so that everyone is only in one group.
Yes, I think the groups were first, try to get in contact and to discuss, and maybe we can specify this now.
Okay, what do you want me to do? I shared the chart.
Yeah, maybe I just yeah, what I tried from the last meeting on was yeah, to minimize or to reduce the steel pipes in my project and to have more of the stone appearance. And this is because, or the reason why the stones, yeah, changed a little bit from this S shape to a more Z shape, and now you have little holes between the stones. And yeah, I tried to minimize them a little more, and this is what I also yeah, spoke about with Pranjal. And then I also made a little, yeah, I tried to if it's possible to use different colors, because I have there's different patterns because of these two different stone heights. So when the pavilion get built up second or third time, you can change the yeah, the layers. And so I also thought about different colors of stones, but then it got a little, yeah, mixed up. And I think the surface and the yeah, the appearance of the stone, in my opinion, is more similar to this weaving part I want to connect with, when the stone has just the, yeah, this yellow color and no different. Yeah. And then we discussed a little bit about other connections, but yeah, this is the yeah, the actual, the point where I'm now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. Shall we discuss another project in relation to yours?
Yes. Should I share my screen?
Pranjal, should I share?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'll just quickly go through it. So my idea was inspired from sea sponges and to make a modular pavilion. So ma'am, can you go to next slide, please?
Yeah.
So in the last discussion, it was suggested to go for a catenary roof structure or a archaic structure. So I worked on it, but the main problem was with the support, means how to support the roof. So I decided to go with truss system, and well, this is what I worked on. So on the two opposite corners, I'll be giving you two box trusses, and at the top there will be two 2D truss, one principal and one secondary, to support the whole roof. The modules will be just just be kept on the steel mesh on this truss system, and it will not carry the load to the vertical members. The load will be carried through this two 2D trusses on the top. Can we move to next, ma'am?
Yeah.
So this is how it looks like. I still have to work on the roof because I cannot complete a 3D right now. I can just show the structural members right now. Next, ma'am. Okay, so this is how it works. So the vertical box trusses are made up of 3-inch diameter steel pipe, and top 2D truss are of 2-inch diameter, and I think it is sturdy enough to carry the load of the roof to the ground. That's what I have been working on right now. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Pranjal.
Okay, I'll stop sharing now.
Yes.
Is there another project in this group, or is there a broader dialogue? No?
No, sir, only 2 projects.
2 projects. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. What I really like in both of your work, I mean, to go on with possible topics. I mean, we don't speak about forms, we don't speak about authorship, we don't speak about the individual drama of creation, but about a dialogue. And what I really like in both of your work is the textile nature of what you are doing. So combining things into a curtain wall, something which might be suspended, or it's not really load bearing. It is an interesting, well, it's like in French you call it dentelle, or it's Brüsseler Spitze, we would say in German. So it's something which you look through, and it is not completely closing the view, and somehow it's like a wheel or a kind of filter through which you can look, or which is also hiding away something. So in Alexandra's proposal, it's standing on the ground, and in Pranjal, where I don't know if it's partly suspended or it is held together in the space by an iron frame. And also in Alexandra, there is an iron core maintaining it. So, but both projects really bring the stone into complicated fittings. You can see it also, the joinery of the stone reminds me almost to wood or a different material. And the same in Pranjal, where you bring the stone, and it should be a hard stone, into this engineering and very delicate fittings, probably also with metal balls in it, holding it together. So I think there is an interesting dialogue, and somehow, well, stone is not wood and it's not steel. It completely lacks the flexibility, and it might break. So there is a challenge coming from the material itself. And so Alexandra, just a question, I mean, did you identify the stone for such an undertaking?
Identify how?
Yeah, what kind of stone would you?
I want to try it with a sandstone, because I think it's very, it has perfect, I don't know what to call it, but it's easy to do with the to shape it with this CNC, and I think also, it's very good to have this, to work with this. It's not this hard, but I hope it's better than such another heavy hard stone. So I tried it with.
Yeah, I see in both of your cases, like, an extension of Zemper's ideology when he talks about enclosure and architectiles. So, yeah, it's very interesting. What Alexandra is doing is more at an enclosure level, and there is no sort of roof system there, so it's open to sky. So it's just like a fabric which is standing, emerging from the ground and standing above. In Pranjal's case, there is a complicated roofing system, and last time he got this input that he should think about a catenary form, and that's how he's working with those trusses on the roof system. But essentially, I see like 3 commonalities in both of your modules. One is that both of these are modular in nature. So they have an intrinsic system in place. Alexandra is using less number of modules and a very lightweight structure. So she's using sandstone, which is light and porous, and like close to 200 modules. And Pranjal is using close to 2,000 or 2,500 modules. So it's a very, very sort of psychedelic surface that he is developing, but with more number of modules. In case of Alexandra, the number of modules are less, but because it is like a, dynamic and fluid form, it still gives us that surface modulation and psychedelic treatment. So modular system is one, and second is obviously the compression and tension coming together. So in Pranjal's case, I have personally been observing and suggesting him that if he could try to reduce a bit of tension members, because I see a lot of steel. And when I think in terms of production, I can see Medine also nodding to that. So when I see in terms of production, this is an additional material, additional resourcing, and costing everything. So what and the third thing, of course, that I see common is, yes, this idea of enclosure and bringing the fluidity in this stationary sturdy architecture through this dynamic module and creating this enclosure. So maybe based on these three common aspects, you can try to work together, have a sort of a simplified system, have less number of steel members, and yet continue with your idea of enclosure and dynamic surface modulation is what I see.
Okay. Look.
Can you work together as team, both of you? Alexandra is
Yes.
already smiling.
Yes, we can. It's fine.
Yeah, I think the challenge is also a bit the question of being thrilled or excited by, how does it hold together? And somehow you don't want to reveal it. I mean, it holds together by magic. And this magical aspect, I like it very much in both of your work. So the iron is hidden. You don't see it. And somehow it could be a scaffold. I mean, in Pranjal's work, it's almost like a scaffolding standing on one side, so you could see it. But if you go inside, you are completely thrilled by the beauty of this curtain. So this kind of double side, I mean, working with expectation and deception, or you expect something and then you're completely lifted to a different, unexpected dimension. This is interesting, I think, and the curtain perhaps doesn't look from both sides in the same way. So this is one point. And what we want to do with Mokul and the Trivedi group is somehow to think about what stone can do. Of course, we could also work with a Tata or an Indian steel company. And then we would ask her, what is possible with steel? But here it's about stone. And I wonder if these bolts or the fitting points couldn't be out of a harder stone. If Alexandra says, well, I'm interested in sandstone, or because it's you can carve it easily. How about the idea of putting marble as a stronger fitting element, like a bolt, and using a softer stone? So then we would be inside the register of stone still, and not using devices outside stone. I mean, it's just an idea. I mean, I'm not against the scaffolding, but then, at least I think the stone, this stone curtain, perhaps could be just out of stone.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's where that's what I meant when I say that he could reduce the tension members. Like one of the groups, Dhruv and Varun, they have tried to use majorly stone and certain kinds of joineries that would bring stone together and less steel members. So yeah, maybe both of you can think about it.
Or Smirti, do you think they could maybe join the group with the other two students who are using only stone or to merge these ideas.
Yeah, I think you have a good suggestion. Maybe then in continuity to this, we can see Prashant's work. Narinda ma'am, what do you suggest?
Yes, ma'am. I think so. That's also
In
modular.
continuity, yeah. I think taking as part of this group itself, we could include Prashant's work also, if you would like to have a look at the chart. Because
Yeah.
he's also using a modular system in stone, but he has used very less steel members, and he has used the stone as the main material for addressing the compressive forces.
Okay. I'll share the screen for Prashant then.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, am I audible? Am I
Yes,
audible?
yes.
Yes. I think that this one. Yes. Prashant, you can continue now.
Okay. So, as stated in the last presentation also, my inspiration comes from the Buddhist wheels which are there in the monastery and can be revolved with hand. And then I wanted a structure or a pavilion which was made out of different modules which could revolve and cast a shade and shadow effect on the ground, which would be different throughout the day with the movement of sun. Next slide, please. And probably when thinking about the kind of stone which had to be used for it, I see it as a combination of different stones, because in my pavilion there are around 45 modules to be used, which are of the same size, and if they have a different material to be used, they would even look better. And next slide, please. So this is the kind of the module which I have. I have created a puncher in the center so as to reduce its overall load, and the size which I have taken is 45 centimeter because it restricts up the number of modules and it doesn't spoil the visual delight which I want to achieve out of it. Next, please. So this is the kind of joinery which I am trying to use. There would be a groove which would be 6 centimeter deep on a face which is around 12 centimeter wide, and this unit is 45 centimeter by 45 centimeters, and the groove would be in a radius of around 4 centimeters. So in this central groove, we can fit in a ball bearing with the shaft connecting to it, and another ball bearing which would fit into the next member. So probably it would be fitted along the axis in which I want the overall movement to be, or the rotation to be there. Next, please. Next. So this is my overall plan, and as I told that all the members can be rotated up. So there are different layers, and different directions or the different elevations give a different elevational view. Next, please. So this is how the effective cross-sectional of the entire building is. The lower lintels are around 200 mm wide, and they are going along with the post and are fitted in along by a steel 4 mm thick plate, and also is using epoxy and a bolt arrangement to it. And then when we come up, there are lintels which are thinner, around 115 mm wide, and these are the various elevations. So as we can see, south and east are almost giving me a similar kind of the elevational view, but when they would be rotated with hand, they would provide a much different ambience. As next slide, please. So this is the west elevation, in which I have a hanging module, which is acting like a bell member, which is there in our Indian temples, which can be rotated with hand. And although it is the west elevation, it can be placed in any direction in whichever we want. So the interchangeability of the elevational members is also possible in this. And the next one is, for example, there is a roof which is formed out of the stone members only and resting on the side bearing lintels and the posts. So in the north elevation, the upper one, the members are fixed because they have a support both on the horizontal and the vertical side. So that is fixing up, that is restricting up the movement. But the member which is below it is hanging it from this member. And with the arrangement of ball bearing and the shaft in between, this is rotatable in different directions. And it is also the same arrangement below the central lintel. Next, please. So, as I've already told, this is the size of my module, and depending upon the axis of rotation, I'll fit in this arrangement of the ball bearing and the shaft, and creating up a puncture in the main stone module. Next, please. And this is also showing up that module on the arrangement of the fixture, the ball bearing and the shaft, how it would produce a movement in which direction. For example, if I have lintels on both the ends and a single member is to be fitted in, then the member C kind of arrangement would be there, which would have the shaft on both the sides and ball bearing on both the sides. Along with the ball bearing over here, I would have a 4 mm thick steel plate, which would just get fitted or fixed to the upper lintel with the help of epoxy solution, and also the bolts would be there to further strengthen up the joint. Next, please. So this is the kind of arrangement or the detail to hold together the lintels and the post. As already stated, that I have a L-shaped steel member to hold them together, although they are also fit in with a tongue and groove joint. So it is the steel plate is just giving an extra strength to the joint, and it won't allow any kind of lateral movement into the structure. Next, please. So these are the views, and during the course of the day, the sun movement would give different shade and shadow effects out of this. Next, please.
That is the last one, Prashant.
That is the last one. So that is it.
Yeah, thank you, Parshan. I would have just perhaps a question not only addressed to you, but also to many other designs. The further we go into the direction of a curtain or a very fascinating fabric, suspended or rotating or being made out of modules in a complicated way, the more we get away from the tectonics. So I think Philip, who put one big stone on two supporting elements, he goes back to a very archaic idea of tectonics. A lintel, which is a very big one, and 2 supporting elements. I would say most of the other designs, they step out of the idea of stone tectonics and develop something in which the roof plays a minor role. Alexandra actually has no roof. And here, and also in Aude's design, the roof structure is made out of horizontal lintels, but we see already it's not so easy to keep them together. And even in contemporary stone construction, I saw one recent building made of stone in Paris. And what they do is also they use concrete slabs. They don't get rid of concrete. So my question would be here to Prashant, do we really need a roof? I mean, we had different in Pranjal work. There was a steel structure supporting it. Alexandra's used steel, and here again, I think it's not really, you know, out of making a hut or a building, but I really like your approach in the sense of a curtain again. So perhaps you could think about the necessity of a roof structure.
So that is true. That question was always there in my mind. Since I have started, I even saw different approaches for the kind of roof. I tried making a different pattern of the roof. But eventually, I think that since it is almost a small space and it is almost enclosed on all the sides, so a one clear opening would actually help more.
Yeah, also when you think about feeling the necessity of an opening. I mean, you know, when you are in a closed room, you want to open a window. When you come from this sacred space where people would move these elements because of religious motivation, which is probably not the case in your pavilion, because people would like the playfulness of moving elements. But if you think about space and why would you like to touch it or use it, then perhaps even these elements could stand closer to each other, and you might like to open things because you want to look outside, or it's close to your body, or so this could be an interesting factor.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I think you can work together, the three of you, taking this idea of curtain on enclosure ahead, and you could think about doing away with the roof altogether and highlighting the tectonic part of the stone, like Axel was explaining. I see a great possibility of dialogue between the three of you.
Yes, and moreover, even Jeron's work is also similar to the kind of work which we are trying to do with the help of modules. So,
Irion's work also you are suggesting is on the same lines, modular system.
Yeah. Gerion has a modular system too, I think.
Let me see, have a look at what he's doing.
A modular system.
Gerion is on the way.
Okay.
He's vaccinated today, and he's joining us in between, but he cannot present right now. But I think that
I
his
could
project
present in about 10 minutes, I think.
Okay, so then you want to use the 10 minutes? Or Gerion, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I need 10 minutes to be at home, so I could present in 10 minutes. So that's what I meant.
But would you agree that I mean that your project would fit into these series of other 3 projects, and then to work on this wie sagt man, this modular, you said like a modular system that would create work that where you focus on this sag mal so textile appearance of the material using perhaps sagt man hard and soft stone and stone that's perforated and it's translucent or transparent at some parts. I mean,
I think Gerion just needs to get home, and perhaps we can ask Amruta. She's also suggesting a system of modules, as I understand, in granite, hand cut and CNC, to come up with well, the corners of which was meant to be. I mean,
I saw Amruta and Velisa probably presenting in a group because even though Amruta has a modular approach, but the kind of form that she's approaching, and you know the conical and frustal, its structural system is pretty different from these ones that we saw. That is what I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe till the time Girion reaches his place, should we have Amruta and Velisa then?
Should I share the screen for Amruta? Amruta is there.
Yeah. Amruta, Velisa, and Christian, I could look at the chart and see some similarity in terms of form development and also in terms of detailing. So yeah, should we go ahead, Nadine?
Just continue as you suggested. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'll share the screen then, Amruta.
Am I audible? Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, Amruta.
Okay.
Yeah, you go ahead now.
Here the prototype is inspired from temple gate paste from southern part of India called Gobras. Gobram is a monumental entrance tower built in stone that stands as a landmark that demarcates the house of God from its mundane surrounding. Can we go to the next sheet? Yeah. So here, this massive towering structure is scaled down to a 3 by 3 by 3 meter volume by interlocking granite slabs in a step format that counterbalance each other. And then the vertical axis of the temple is represented through a spire in the center, which would direct our vision upwards through this finial into the infinite, which is considered the source of divinity. Here, this is achieved through stacking stones along a central steel rope. Can we go back to? Yeah. So, if we take a single freestanding wing, the base modules are designed as thicker slabs to take the entire load, and as we go upwards, the structure leans towards the center of the pavilion, and so the thickness also reduces to as thin as 1.5 centimeters. Then typical joinery detail for each slab thickness is shown here. Tongue and groove joints will be mechanically fastened to make the connections rigid, and then it will be inserted into the previous stone modules. At the base, a T-channel will be running along the base of the module, and it will be anchored using bolts to the foundation stone. Next sheet, please. So here we did a little structural stability test. Around 330 kilograms is the weight of a single freestanding wing, which is anchored to a granite stone foundation of size 1.5 by 1.5 by 0.5 meters. There are 36 pieces in each wing, and that sums up to a total of 144 granite pieces, including foundation stones. Total weight would be around 13.5 ton. The result shows that when the connections are considered rigid using mechanical fasteners, the deflections and stress are within the safe level, and the structure is stable as well. Next slide, please. These are some rendered images of the pavilion. Lighting needs to be reworked, but then I could bring in the depiction of Gopuram in a subtle way by leaving behind all the massiness associated with it. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Amruta. Is there a second or a third one to discuss in line with this proposal? Did you form a group, Amruta, with others?
Vesela and Christian, right, Amruta?
Yeah, Vesela.
I was supposed to work with Ocean. I don't know if we should continue, or
Okay.
if there's anyone else who wants to present first.
Okay, you could then go with Ocean, but with Amruta, I thought she was working with Vesela. Is she there?
Yes, I'm here, but we mostly discussed the foundation points, and yeah, in my case, I came to the conclusion that I actually don't need a specific connection in the ground to keep my pavilion standing. Yeah.
Vesela, in which with which projects do you see yours related to?
I think I also spoke with Suriendo about the patterns and the way to hide the seam between the stones. So I see parallels of my project with many others, but I don't see one project that is very similar to mine.
And Vesela, if you would identify a topic on which you could work with others, what would be this topic?
Yeah, patterns, I think, because this was and still is the main goal.
So what we should do now, I think, because the group thing doesn't really work, we should identify key notions on which groups could meet. So Vesela, thank you for introducing one topic, which is pattern. We already had the idea of textile, Smrti was suggesting. So Gottfried Semper and his idea of, well, something which looks like a curtain, which is a textile, a fabric, suspended or standing or hanging in front of the load-bearing part of the wall. So something textile, weaving things together and starting with modules that brought into a fabric. So if I may, I just write down this topic. So we have patterns. We had this nice idea of Philip, but just correct me if I'm wrong, which is perfection and imperfection, or also the question of a pattern, and we can add ornament.
Ornamentation, yeah.
Ornamentation. We have the textile and the curtain wall and the fabric.
Yeah.
And what else? We had this idea of tectonics also, because in Ord's design, I think the classical tectonic stone as a material with a lot of compressive strength can bear kind of can still be used for walls in a traditional way. So perhaps tectonics could be interesting. And what is now appearing here with the work of Amruta, is the contour line of what was formerly like a pyramidal structure. I mean, in the temple. I mean, which is much more massive, and here brought down to little plates which are stacked together. And I wonder also, Amruta, if we take it to the top, and these lines would meet in, you know, in a high point, and of course you would lose this breathtaking challenge that, you know, these inclined columns that they stand in on their own, but you would de-dramatize a bit the thing and be still close to the temple architecture, because there's also a meeting point on top. But I don't know if you...
For that, she will have to do away with the central spire that she has designed, right, Amrita?
Yes, ma'am.
Which gives this impression of lines converging in the center.
Yes.
But Amruta, how would you name what you are doing? What is, if you would put a name on it, what kind of ghost are you chasing? What phantom are you after? What is the idea? Do you...
Interlocking.
Interlocking.
Okay. I also see a very metaphysical concept behind few of these prototypes, and we could probably bring them together as this concept of convergence. I don't know. This is what I thought looking at her prototype, and also Christiane's and Vesila's.
Yeah, what I'm liking a lot in Amruta's idea is just to give a glimpse of what the temple was. So I think it's a attempt, and this is very modern, of reduction. So you know Giacometti? Giacometti, he's the Swiss Italian sculptor who lived in France most of his life, in Paris. And he started as a sculptor, and then he made human figure thinner and thinner. And he ended up with a line, you know, Giacometti, in the end, there is no more matter. And you want to, what happened to human beings? I mean, in Giacometti, it's just and I think it's a similar approach in yours. What are you doing with the temple? And it's a dematerialization. And this is spiritual. So when you say, well, I take away matter, what do you have in the end? You only have the spirit of the temple, which is a religious thing. I mean, saying, well, you don't need all the mass, and you just get a kind of imagination. So the temple is in your mind, and you have just the corners left of it, but it is still there. So this idea, I mean, Peter Smithson, he used the word charged void. So what you have in the middle is a charged void, is nothing. And the Kyoto School of Philosophy, they developed, Nishitani and Nishida, they worked on nothingness. So in Buddhist philosophy, nothing is central. So you need to speculate about nothing because our substance hasn't any weight. There will be nothing. And what you try to reach is emptiness, or this kind of state of meditation where you are not anymore bound to matter. You overcome matter. So I see, I mean, if there is something religious in your work coming from the temple, then it is this nothingness, which is perhaps not a Hindu subject, but more a Buddhist one. So I see a slight idea, a shift from Hinduism to Buddhism. Buddha came from Hindu faith, and so I don't know, but perhaps this is leading too far. Anyway.
That also suggests that we have another impression of the Buddhist stupa, which has been translated into a contemporary expression. Maybe then that could also be grouped here.
Yeah, perhaps.
And
but
then
anyway,
about something related to the spiritual aspect and convergence and dematerialization. We could have like one group.
And perhaps Amruta, I mean, perhaps this interlocking idea, it's a very technical one. You know, you try to do this engineering thing, and in the end, you bring stone to something which stone doesn't want to do. Okay, but if we take it as a progressive work towards abstraction, or just designing a contour line with a material that had been associated to massive construction, you know, to pyramids and huge temples and piles of stones, and you bring it just to the line, then I think there might be even a further step in it. So it just as a...
Yeah, that could be done.
So if you agree, we take interlocking, of course, but also dematerialization as a topic.
Yeah, dematerialization, because then there would be some more prototypes that could fall under this.
Exactly. So the opposite of heaviness and disappearance of matter. So I think we have now already a good collection of notions, and perhaps we can look at another work. I mean, Smriti, you mentioned this stupa. Perhaps there is a...
Yeah,
who would like
Varun, who had taken inspiration from the Buddhist stupa, and then they have tried to translate it into a contemporary interpretation.
Okay, ma'am, I'll share the screen for you.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah. So hi everyone, myself Varun and my teammate Dhruv will be presenting our design on the stone pavilion. Firstly, to brief about our design approach, we decided to follow the philosophy of using material as a design tool. We started our research from the very basics of the material stone, its texture, its usability, like compression, strength, and also did research about various historical usages accordingly. We took our inspiration from Sanchi as we had focused on utilizing the compression bearing aspects of the stone. As Sir also mentioned, that tectonics of the stone was our main motive to be taken. Now coming to the concept, there are primarily three aspects of our design concept. We wanted it to be a modern interpretation of historical monument in a minimalistic style, like in a minimalistic way. And we were having a base concept of multiple arches combined to form a stable domical structure. And the ease in construction was also our main motive with the fabrication of modules. Constructing them in workable sizes will also enable the ease of transportation. Yeah. So, next page. Yeah. In this, the design evolution, we started with the concept of stone as we wanted to captivate the compression, as I told. Then we wanted to go further with the arch mechanism. And in the process of iteration, we came across Sanchi Stupa. And so we got inspired that, okay, now we can go ahead with the domical structure, or multiple arches can be formed into a dome. And as we know, Sanchi Stupa is a Buddhist complex, which helped us to go further with the devotional and spiritual aspects of the place. So this is how the building inspired us to make this build form. I would like now Dhruv to continue with the structural aspects.
I think so, Dhruv, his mic is not working.
Am I audible now, ma'am?
Yes, Dhruv, now you are audible.
Okay. So now coming to the design drawings, as we can see in the roof plan, the pavilion is derived from the octagonal form. There are 6 flaps in total, 3 on each of the 2 sides that converges at center to form a domical structure. So each flap side is made up of 7 stone modules, and the octagonal keystone made up of basalt is placed at the top. Now as represented in the section, thickness of the stone modules reduces gradually as we move from bottom to the top. This is to facilitate the arcade load mechanism and to transfer the lateral thrust efficiently to the ground. Sittings are provided inside the pavilion, which can be used for informal meetings as well as for meditation based on the site context. Next slide, please. So these are the front and side elevation of the pavilion. The height of the keystone at the topmost is 2.7 meter from the ground, and rectangular perforation between each of the stone modules are given to create a rhythmic pattern and also to create a play of light and shadow, basically to amplify the overall spatial quality of the pavilion. Next slide, please. Now about the joinery details, we wanted to reduce the use of steel as much as possible to maintain the integrity of stone character. And so as seen in the figure 1, every adjacent flap sides are connected with a rebate joint to avoid their horizontal displacement. And as seen in figure 2, every adjoining stone modules are connected with the mortise and tenon joint. And as per figure 3, lastly, the inclined rebate joint is used for the connection between the keystone and the topmost stone modules of flap sides. Now, since the pavilion was conceived to function as a meditation space, there is a symbolic representation in which the 7 perforation represents the 7 energy points of human body known as chakra, whose activation is considered as one of the highest accomplishment in the spiritual journey of the seeker. Now, as a materials, pink and red sandstones are used in combination mainly because of rich texture, which we wanted a user to feel visually as well as through touch. And sandstone are also used because of their warm color and wider availability in Indian states. Fabrication of the stone modules can be done by local artisans through conventional handmade tools, and for erection of the structure on site, scaffolding formwork can be constructed. Then stone modules can be laid sequentially to form the arcade flaps, and finally keystone can be assembled to fix the entire domical form. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the module details with the dimensions and labeling. There are total 43 stone modules, including the keystone. A white basalt stone is used for keystone, and it is ornamented with the inlay work, which is a famous stone craft of Agra. The dimension of each stone module along with joinery details, number of units, material types, estimated weight, and their labeling is mentioned, which can be referred during the production. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dhruv and Varun. If you allow, I would like to share an image with you. I don't know if it works.
Sure, sir.
Can you see this? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What I'm showing to you is from France. It's from Angers. It's in the center of France. And it's a structure built in 16th century. And in this time, people were fascinated by stone cutting because they had the geometric tools for it. What you see is an exercise of descriptive geometry. So people were capable already at this time to create a double curved shape, and actually adapting stones to this. If you look at this stone here, it is inside this cylindrical element, and then there is a vault bringing the forces into the walls, and the stone is fitting in both directions. So it's quite complicated. And somehow your work is probably close to it, because if you want to cut the stone, that it's part of this dome geometry, where you have to build it, and geometrically define it. So this would be perhaps a challenge in the process of making, because you can imagine that these masons, they needed the precise description, and it was an attempt for architects to show that they had the geometrical knowledge, which then was put into execution by the labor. So just as an idea, what is possible to do in stone in complicated geometries, just as a kind of extension. So if we look for a notion, I would say, well, it could be stereotomy, or I don't know if it exists in English. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dhruv. Yeah, so the idea why I just wanted them to show this is, of course, it's a different concept than what Amruta is working, but they are also trying to break this heavy dome into like smaller modules. So that way, that's also dematerialization and interlocking, even though joineries are different in both the cases. Yeah. All right. Is there any group from our German side, German friends, who would probably, come under this group or classification of dematerialization or interlocking? Then we could probably see that also. I can see another group, Oshin, Christian, Rosa, and Manas, but that's another group that I have identified. But continuing with dematerialization and interlocking, if any of you would like to volunteer, show your work.
Maybe I can shortly present my results, but I will have to leave in a few minutes, so it will be very short. So then I'm sharing my screen. I hope it's visible for everyone now. Yeah, I worked on the idea of a steel framework covered with these stone tiles. And what I did in the past few weeks was to work on modification of the shape of this pavilion, and somehow it was suggested to look at this shape or look at this the materials as if it was fabric, and then try to shape it in waves or something which is built according to fabric. And this is what I came up with. So I developed this pavilion a bit further and added layers to it. And now there are two layers of modules, an inner and an outer shell, which is made of smaller sections. And the second thing which I added is an opening to the top, which was also necessary to interlock these modules on the top point of the pavilion. And this is how it's looking now. This is the elevation, and you see how this layering is continuing in two different shapes. And those are the details which I developed. So the top point is made of those U-shaped profiles, and the vertical steps are connected, and then it is connected to a round profile, and so everything will be held in place on top, and the different tiles are attached with little hooks to the horizontal structure. And at the bottom there's an L-shaped steel frame, which is somehow preventing it from pulling outwards. And those are the materials which I want to incorporate in this structure. So different kinds of schist tiles, which can also be broken on the edges. This is no problem, because they are supposed to be reused from production waste or something else, and the steel framework's also supposed to be recycled. And okay, this was very short, but an overview of what I did in the last weeks.
Yeah, thank you, Christiane, for this input. I think you have to leave very soon. Just, I think it's a very pragmatic design, requiring nothing more than waste and making something very luxurious out of waste. So it's I like very much this transformation of value. So things that has been already in the dust, in the litter, which is now pulled out again and becomes an element of decoration. So I think it's a strong idea.
Yes, I also like the idea very much. So this basically focuses on transgritty and recycling. So that could be one identified category. And I see your work is, you and Oshin do have a similar approach, because she's also talking about recycling the waste that is left from the construction. And she's specifically focusing on the gabion wall. So she has a mesh and the stones inserted in it, while you have designed your anchor points at the ground, and you have this armature which is designed like an enclosure. So what we see on the roof like shingles, you are using them exactly for creating the so that's the idea. I like it quite a bit.
Yeah, we also discussed the textile nature of Christiane's
So
work.
should we see some other?
Sorry.
Yes. So no, go ahead.
No, I just see a kind of affinity to the textile, the curtain, and the fabric. So I don't know if you had been in exchange with this group.
Yeah, because what we see as the roofing system, you are trying to do that in the enclosure, like a roof tile or a shingle, which is forming the enclosure as an all. So even you could be working with that group as well. But the idea of recycling and using the waste, that probably that way we had clubbed you with Ocean. You could work with either group.
So then Oshin might present something, or
Yes, Oshin could present. I see four people actually in this one group. Christian, Manas, and Anandu. Like that's one group. Oshin and Rosa, and we had tried to put them together as one group with the understanding of tensegrity and recycling. So we can see if we need to restructure that. We can see Oshin's work, and then we can go to others.
Okay, I'll share the screen then. Ocean, you can present. Ocean, are you there?
Smirti. Also, Rosa, she's not here anymore. She also left.
Okay.
Maybe they, I don't know, perhaps they could, after the meeting, we could send an email maybe to suggest the groupings, and they can decide, and we, I think,
Please go ahead.
so Oshin, shall we just discuss it briefly, or?
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting. We could just at least briefly see the work. Ma'am,
Yeah.
if you
Ocean is not audible. She's saying she's having again the problem with her mic or so.
Ma'am, you present on her behalf. It's okay.
Okay. So her idea was basically from the element of Gabion wall, which uses a steel mesh, and the idea of waste stone. The query waste is there, which is inside making it into a block kind of a thing. So instead of a block, she's making ledges out of it.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yeah, now you're audible, Lotion.
Yeah, I am so sorry for the confusion. I'll just quickly process. Yeah, so then the idea which I was thinking of, like ma'am mentioned, was the idea of a Gabion wall. So that like how like I had started off with the idea of using Cori waste, because generally when you talk about stone, it is mostly a dressed material, so it automatically gives a lot of waste. So then this is a technique which is generally used for slope retention, in which you have a very simple welded mesh cage into which stone of different sizes are put. So and then like it becomes a structure member. So then for the pavilion that we had to make, I was working in a 3x3x3 model, and what you see over here is like a simplified. Ma'am, can you go to the next sheet, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my pavilion would constitute of 8 arms, which would become stable in itself once the entire ring gets completed. So each of these are kind of like cantilevered arms, in which like there would be a basic steel frame, in which the right hand side which you see would constitute of L angles, and we'll be splitting it in 2 parts, as you see in stage 1, in which we'll be putting mesh and then filling it with stones. The third part would be in which I actually wanted some cuttings in the mesh, in which I would really want to kind of fill in huge rocks, which would kind of give it a different kind of texture, in which some of the rocks would be coming out of this mesh surface with all of its rough like tactile nature. And the next step would be like to continue with the same process But what we have to ensure is that the scaffolding is constantly put as we go with each arm, and then the entire structure becomes stable in itself once we are done with all the 8 arms, when the central ring is becomes fixed. So moving on with the reason why I selected such a form. So when you're talking about like any structure like a dome or a like or a similar structure in a like in a 3x3 module, what happens is there's a lot of negative space which comes at the corner of the base. So to avoid that was the reason why I wanted each of these to be rotated, so that each of them would be entrances and small niches in itself, which would become like a small seating space, and then it would all open into that central space, which would give you a space like which would give you a space to look up to the sky. Like it would be a 1.5 meter opening, which would be kind of like, ma'am, can you go to the next sheet just once? Yeah, so then you would have this central opening to which you could look up to. So it would be a 1% space in the center with multiple entries and niches from all sides. So in the previous sheet, I've worked out some details for which I'll basically have only 2 materials. Like one is a steel structure along with a welded mesh, and then stones of different sizes which would be fixed into it. Can you show the previous page just once in which the drawings are there? Yeah, so then it would be a basically this would be the form. Hello?
Yeah, thank you, Oshin. Is there, shall we see it in relation to another work, or would you like to get comments immediately?
We could also see Rosa's work, even if she's not there, but if we could just see the work.
Then I think we should look to the chart.
Can you see it?
Yes, yes. So just to, perhaps you can make it a bit larger, Medina?
Yeah.
Just to understand it. So Rosa had the idea to use stone plates which were perforated, drilled to introduce a wire, a steel wire. So she uses the compressive strength of the stone and the tensile property of cables, steel cables introduced into the stone. And what you see here is the catenary line. So you could use cables and suspend this stone block like pearls on a chain. And they would use they would all agree on this catenary line, the parabolic form, and then you twist it around and you get the dome. So her idea was to use a series of those arches combined to a little corridor. And as you can see here, I think the bottom, you should stabilize it, but the property of this parabolic form would conduct most of the forces in a vertical way into the ground. So there's not too much horizontal pressure, which would lead to the collapse of the. So you have just this tiny foundation, a beam which runs along the outline of this corridor or this vaulted structure. So that's a way of using, in a quite pragmatic way, what stone can do to resist against this pressure, and what steel can do is to resist against the traction. So that's her idea.
Yeah, it's interesting and very similar is Manas and Anandu's idea. If the updated chart, if this is the updated chart, it would show that project too. Girion, I think, has sent the updated sheet. So maybe we could have a look at that as well and then discuss
Is this
commonality.
the updated sheet?
Yes, yes. The last column that we see, that's also.
Yes, I see.
Yeah, yeah. So if Anandu and Manas are there, maybe we could just see a quick presentation of their work also. Something very similar to what we saw.
Yes, it's true.
Are you here, Anandu and
Yes, ma'am.
Manas?
Yes, ma'am. You're here.
Yes, ma'am.
So could you briefly present your idea? Narinder ma'am can share the screen.
Okay, I'll just share the screen. Yeah, Anandu and Manas, you can go ahead.
Hello, everyone. So the main idea, like we thought while designing this, was that stone is usually considered as a very bulky material. You only see a lot of bulky structures with it, and people usually have this notion that stone can, like the structures made with stone are usually bulky and it only has compressive properties. So we wanted to break that notion. We wanted to bring in something that was very dynamic. We want to create a form which would show that that stone could also have, like, to create the illusion that stone could maybe have that tensile property as well. Okay, so our pavilion consists of 7 strands, and each of these strands are divided into 9 segments, and they would be CNC milled. The repetition of strands results into a rhyme which forms a 3D enclosure through which visitors can pass, witnessing the contemporary use of stone, thus breaking their old misconception about stone. We have used limestone for the pavilion because of its high strength and low density. Basalt stone is used for the foundation because it has high density and high strength. The total weight of the pavilion is about 616 kgs, and each of the strands weighs about 88 kgs, and each of the segments weights on the average about 11 kgs. Now Manas will move on to the construction detail.
Yes, so this sheet tells us about elevations and sections. Ma'am, we can go on to the last sheet.
This one?
So like I said, yeah, this one. So we have 9 segments. There has been an update in the way we were dividing segments. Now we don't have any of the segment cuttings at the top of the arches. Like previously we were having only 7 segments, but now and then the weight was around 15 kgs each segment. Now we have 9 segments. Weight is around 11 kgs each, and also there's a groove running on through each of the segments. This groove will be filled with pultruded fiberglass, like this will act as a reinforcement from both the outward as well as in the inward sides of the segments. As far as the joinery is concerned of the segments, each segment has 2 steel plates attached to both of its end using high strength epoxies, and these steel plates can be bolted together, and each of the segments are hand liftable because of their low weights. And the downwards basalt foundation that we have, that is kind of acting as a thread which is connecting all the strands together, so that any lateral forces can be balanced with it. Yes, so that's about it.
Okay, yeah. Can you perhaps explain something about the risk you take? I found the last proposal the most adventurous. I mean, do you see any risk in what you're proposing? Or everything is okay?
There can be some structural problems that we might face when, like, ma'am, can you show this, show the drawing sheet again? The second sheet. This is the last one. So here in the elevation, we can see that somewhere the stone segments are being used to take in the tension. So there we might that particular segment can face a lot of stress and strains. So what we are anticipating is the grooves at that area will be very deep, and the fiberglass that we are using on the surface will help the that particular segment to be stronger than other segments, because it will undergo more stress and strains on the bottom part as well as the above part. Like I can just tell you which segment I'm talking about, ma'am. Can you take me to the last sheet again? I'm talking about the segment number 7 and segment number 6, both of them. Especially segment number 6. It will go. It's kind of bent downwards. That's why.
Manas, could you explain your anchor point, the continuous anchor that you are giving on the ground? You haven't explained.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am, can you take me to first sheet again? Yeah, so what we can see at the both side of ends of the pavilion, we have a basalt slab laid down. So as all the segments have steel plates and you can bolt them, so that's how the foundation, the strands are being attached with the base foundation slabs, and these slabs are not separate and are a single long entity, because they help to take in the lateral forces also, so that the strands don't fall on each other, and they are at the same time attached to each other. So that's how the foundation has been thought of.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this input. If I get it right, all the elements hold together by metallic joints, no? There's no cable running through them.
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I think we are done with this group where we were observing, some aspects regarding recycling or tensegrity. So the steel wires or segments coming together. So we saw Oshin's work there, Christian, Manas and Anandu, and Oza's work.
Yeah, perhaps one more comment to Oshin. This was very brief, and what I see also some similarity to what Philip has done. So the roughness of the material, that these are huge blocks, and especially when we look at the rendering presenting the overall structure, then it looks like coming out of magmatic catastrophe, a chaos, which is kind of the idea of an origin, or a crater in which the volcano would still spit out the lava or whatever. So perhaps there's the quest somehow in this work of, well, not even imperfection, but something chaotic, which is then put into an order. This I like very much in Oshin's work. And yeah, so perhaps we can you could get into
I was
a
exactly
dialogue.
thinking. Yeah, I was exactly thinking about Philip's work, and I thought it would probably. It seems more to me like Chandardeep's work, whose work we haven't seen yet. He's also his inspiration is Inca walls and the traditional methods of construction used by other civilizations, Incas and Aztec. And somehow the way Philip was also trying to use that raw rustic block of stone rather than dematerializing it and create the entire pavilion on those lines. I thought maybe Philip would also like to have a look at Chandardeep's work if Philip is still here.
I think he left already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe they can connect later. We can see Chandardeep's work. If you and Excel and other people think that maybe it would be a better idea to have Chandardeep, Philip, and few more people in a group, we could do that because they are working with the stone tectonics.
I think it's good to have less groups so that we come closer to the real construction, the one that we will construct, so that I mean, rather than having a lot more proposals that are not going to be built, maybe we make bigger groups, and they work on,
exactly. Yeah. So I
on
have
something that can
identified
be built.
five groups. Yeah. No, you are totally right. I have identified five groups. Maybe we can just. So I was mentioning about Chandardeep and Philip in the group of stone tectonics. So what I have made a note of is like enclosure, fabric, curtain as one, taking inspiration from Zemper. Second group I could identify is ornamentation and perfection slash imperfection. Third group I could identify as interlocking and dematerialization. Fourth one that we just saw last, recycling and tensegrity. And fifth one, like Excel was suggesting, is stone tectonics. This is what I could identify so far. Of course, there could be some overlaps and regrouping.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
could
we should send it around and incite students to adopt one of those notions.
Okay. Yeah.
And perhaps work out a common proposal, like a sketch for
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
as one representative project for. So then we would have five formulas.
Yeah, we could at least we could begin to think about that and could think about those five concepts in mind. So Chanda, would you like to present because yours is quite a lot aligned with
Yes,
stone
ma'am.
tectonics.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll share the screen then.
Okay, Girion is also here. He has reached his place finally. Okay, so we will come to you then.
Okay, so yeah. So hello everyone. So my basic inspiration was like from the very ancient times of how the stone was at first used, basically in the Incas and even seen in Japan and India and all the places throughout the world, where stone was used without any mortar and in its raw form, these huge boulders which were then stacked above each other, and they were stabilized by their own weight. No mortar was used, no joinery was used. So in case of Incas also, the why Inca is more prominent because their joinery was very fine, and some studies have shown that this was because of a paste that they used which sort of dissolved the stone surface. So due to their weight, it amalgamated into each other and produced these fine lines that even water could penetrate through it. So my basic form will be inspired from that only. Slide please. Okay, so the basic idea was like to encapsulate the whole idea of stone. I wanted it to be a shrine, my form, because I feel that stone is best served when it's used as an imposing material, where its heaviness and its raw nature is come out the most, being staying true to its nature. So like we see in caves or a setting, so this is the form of a shrine open from four sides and circular walls, and this will be consisted by stacking huge boulders upon each other. The bottom ones will of course be heavier than the top ones, and the chemical paste can be used here, but even without so, this structure should be stable, as there will be a slight incline of 3 to 5 degrees, which is known to keep the structure stable, which it provides maximum stability. And yeah, and the idea behind the surface is that it be left completely raw. So just like Phillips exposure in one phases where the stone, the whole boulder is completely natural, left raw. So that's my idea, so similar to that. And slide please. Yeah, so these are like some of the blocks. Like the lintel ones is an important one because it takes load and it has to come up an opening. And then there's on the topmost layer, because that's the one which will be most unstable because there is no weight upon it. So there only I will use an overlap, half overlap joint going around in a full circle that keeps the topmost layer stable. And this is like a kind of a surface development which shows of how the various lines of the joinery will be shown, and some more blocks. So the typical weight of the whole structure would be quite high, so it will be around 12 to 14 tons. And the material I would be using will be black granite, and granite being like, because it has good strength, and also granite is known to be go well with the chemical paste if used, because the siliceous materials and the feldspars are known to dissolve more greatly with those chemicals, which basically consists of humic acid and pyrite, so to increase its acidity. So the huge boulders can be machine cut, but only the joinery surfaces. And the thing is that also uh, like manually also the work can be done when it's brought into places, giving it a more original look. So the carving and something like that, if you have to make an alcove, that could be done right on site. And once when the whole the whole structure is brought into place, then the numbering could be done, and so it then makes it easier for if you have to make it to a different space. Slide please. Yeah, so this was like, this is kind of an exploded view of the whole blocks that will stack above each other. And this is the kind of idea that I want to present of these huge boulders, which are so imposing from the outside and when you see it from the inside also. So it gives this, like, you know, stays true to the nature of the stone. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Fascinating work, Chandradeep. I really like also this massive appearance. And as you said before, stone is often used for monumental reasons. It's imposing, and and you make really good use out of this tradition, this figure of thought. So I also see this affinity with, as Smriti already mentioned, Philip's work, but also Vesela. I think she could join your group because she also counts on the massiveness of this stone, and it would be great if you could form a group of discussion,
yes,
and perhaps even those who wanted to work on domes and stereotomic ideas could join you. So
Fine through.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chandradeep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Axel. I see Jessica and Girion here. I think they are waiting very patiently for a long time. We can see their works. And like you rightly pointed out, I also see Philip, Jessica, and sorry, you mentioned someone's work.
Vesela.
Vesela. Yeah, I also see them as one group. Yeah.
Gerion, would you like to show your...
Yes, I will do so. We could do it with the chart, or maybe it's better to go to cut again, because I think it's best visible there. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So this is the current appearance of the pavilion. And as you may see, I addressed some issues after a meeting I had with Rosa and Fernando. And we were speaking about the foundation and about joinery. And I had the issue of having too many pieces for joinery and a problem with the statics. And as you may see here, I addressed this problem by using another approach to the connection between the different modules. And I now have a strong, I call it, back of the pavilion, and in the parts of the pavilion where the walls meet, there is now a solid stone, which is which has a little carving here, so a steel bar can be placed in, and each module has the same carved out areas, so they fit with in the steel bar, so they get aligned on the steel bar, and the steel bar serve as a supporting structure as well as a connection between the elements. So the little elements, my little plates are only used to connect the modules in itself. So they don't have to don't have to bring down any forces anymore. They just to connect the element in itself and to for better alignment. So all the force is brought down directly to the stone, and in parts where it's complicated for the stone to bring the force down to the ground, it's supported by the steel. And that's my latest approach. And I got rid of the roof. I think we can see it here. Now there is only there are some plates that are placed on top of the latest layer of modules, and they close the pavilion. And the same is for the foundation. There are some stone plates laid on the ground, and by putting the steel bars in and then the first layer, they get sinking modules because they got aligned by the steel bars. Yeah, and now I have very versatile walls, so I can place the walls as I want to, and I can make them higher, I can make them lower. I can put this wall out and place it anywhere else. I can make it even 3 times as high as I would like to. Yeah. So that was another point that was very important for me, to have this, the possibility to build another pavilion on another place. Yeah. So far.
Yeah, thank you, Garen. Just one question in relation to the milling process. I think this was already asked by Narinder, ma'am. How about the making of this structure? So if we think about effectiveness and the tools which are available, and how would you produce these blue elements? They are U-shaped, aren't they?
They're U-shaped, yes. Yeah. I think it would be best to produce it with a CNC. And afterwards, like we heard in the meeting with the professionals some weeks ago, there would be usually some masonry work after the CNC to clean it up. I think that should be done to maintain really equal product in every element. But the back, I think it can be masoned totally by hand, actually. So I think it would be one part CNC and then hand masoned. And the roofing and the foundation could also mason by hand. And there would be, of course, some steel work to do, little connecting plates. Now I have them out of steel. They could be out of stone because they don't have to bear any forces anymore. So they could also be out of stone. Then they would probably also be made out of with the CNC.
Yeah, just carry on. Just one idea. I mean, to simplify. I mean, a milling process. For a U-shaped stone element. First of all, you would lose a lot of matter because everything has to be carved out, and there's an incredible loss of matter. If you consider something coming from wood construction, a nut and tongue, so I don't know how you call it in English. So if there's a little channel, and you would push in these vertical elements, then you might achieve the same effect, no? Just you have plates, and so I mean, isn't there just to avoid this huge, the carving of all these stones?
Yeah. I think in the beginning of I think in my first design, I had something like this, and then I said, I want to reduce the number of pieces, but maybe because I made it bigger, there are less pieces, so maybe I should go back to that, because like you said, the amount of waste is very high, actually.
Yeah, also just to add, I mean, also we will have to think a bit about the base, how it stands. Are we going to make a trench, or it stands firmly on the ground? You have suggested a system of steel plates being anchored on the ground itself, right?
Yeah, I have thought about that. I think there has to be a solid ground, and then, it has to be. I thought about just placing them on a solid ground, actually. It has to be even, but because of the steel bars, it's not that important anymore that it's totally even. I think you can even do something with sand or something like that. I don't want to dig into the earth, because that would affect my concept of building up the pavilion and then bringing it down and then placing it on another spot. So I just thought about standing the pavilion, setting it up anywhere.
Yeah, I think what you could try is you could think about a system of joinery like one Excel was explaining, and maybe the wastage could be reduced. And like I was saying earlier also, we see your project going in that enclosure classification. If you would like to discuss further and work with the groups, are you working with that group?
I think it would be nice to work with them, because we have similar topics to work on.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Jessica, I think she wanted to present.
Hello. I have done some changes and I can share my screen. So I had in the beginning the arcs that are coming together. So this was the main concept with this main space in the middle. And for me, it was also with the stone tectonics, one of the topics that I wanted to use this heaviness of the stone, and one of the beginning concept, it was this different type of stones coming together in this pavilion. In these pavilion models, and one module is coming with the other one, and they can be combined to build spaces. So the things that I improved, or when I started to exchange, was that in the beginning it was with small pieces. It was in bricks. So now it, as we had the discussion with Axel the last time also, it was to define it to different elements. And so this element can have a joining, which is the middle stone that I also had it before, and this is the ornamented part. So now I just put it together, the plans that I had for this table, but still it's the middle stone, and the things that have changed is like to make this form combination of models. I still have the same, but maybe it would be like it has also a light impression in the middle, and with this middle stone holding them together. And yeah, I'm still working on it, and but this is the summary of it. But I think that it fits with the stone tectonic group, so I can definitely see it in this group with Chandradeep, Vesela, and Philip that you also told.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jessica. I think it's a very interesting contribution, and it's a bit, labyrinthic. I mean, it's almost a field of arches and meeting points, and I like it very much. Although it's quite a big structure, it's, I think, expanding beyond the limits we already have. But I also like the idea of something particular, the last stone, which holds together all the arches and the attention you are giving to it. So it also joins the idea of the ornamentation of something outstanding, or of a bigger importance than the supporting elements. So they all point to the centerpiece. Yeah. So I think we got a very, very interesting development and many ideas, and these five.
Just to add to what you were saying, Axel, like maybe it could help Jessica have another approach. Like the central keystone that you are looking at, how much is the size of it? Is it like one piece fit in keystone, or if it is a larger expense, then you will probably have to think how it fits in there. So a little bit regarding the size of the central stone, whether it's in one piece or in parts, or how is it joined with these other arms, if you could just think about that detail. Like in the case of Dhruv, they had the similar concept. They have this octagonal keystone which just sits on a rebate joint, rather than having any sort of tensile ring or any sort of steel element. And another thing, what I really liked is the idea that you suggested towards the end. It could be something like an oculus. So I was suggesting in the case of Dhruv, it could be a stone like onyx, or something which is like translucent, which gives the impression of open to sky, or an oculus like we had in the Roman buildings and, Greek buildings. Yeah, just that. Yeah, otherwise it's a very pragmatic and interesting prototype. I really liked it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope we didn't forget anything.
I guess Ma'am Raman's presentation. Ma'am, your voice is muted.
I'm sorry. I was saying, yeah, we just have one left. Have we covered everybody from our German side, German friends? Is anybody left?
I think everyone presented.
Okay, so we can have a very quick presentation by Raman. He's the only one left, I think. Can we do that, Axel? Do you have time? Okay.
Yeah, Raman, you can go ahead with the presentation.
Raman, are you there? Is there some problem with your mic? Raman, you are on mute.
He says he has some technical issues, so should I tell the idea behind his
Yeah.
design?
Please do it briefly.
Yeah. So his idea is basically from the hill architecture. We have this typical stone architecture, or the way it is built up in hills. So it's a post and beam system, but the idea which he innovated is using movable louvers on two of the faces, and some of the perforations on one of the side, and keeping one of the side open. And on the over this four post and lintel system, what they have is they have either two tiered or three tiered roofing system. The roofing system primarily is of the wooden truss, and then the shingles on top of it. So it's kind of an ideation from traditional vernacular architecture from the hill states of our country. And then these are some of the details which he worked out on the double pavilion. So there was an iteration which we were suggesting where we could think of just the single layer for the roof truss, and leave the upper as an opening in the center, rather than having a complete pitched roof, complete in enclosed one, just a single tiered uh, roof. This is one of the render which he has. Um, that's it. So his basic idea was from the incorporating the traditional element from the hill architecture, and using the stones which are readily available in the hill states. So highlighting that aspect of stone into the indigenous architecture, into the mass architecture of locals there. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's interesting also to come up with traditional features and introducing also other materials than stone. Perhaps we should briefly try to identify these 5 groups, if you like, or you can do it yourself. But from my point of view, it would be good to work on a common project in this affinity of you know, families of topics. So as we mentioned sometimes already today, so we have this enclosure group, the group of tectonics and the massiveness of stone and the intelligence of cutting these pieces into strong load-bearing stones. So this was the second group, enclosure, tectonics. The third was the opposite of it, so dematerialization. So the contour line or something leading towards abstraction, or taking away the massiveness of stone and leaving just plates or smaller elements. And then we had the tensile group. Is it right? Or something introducing steel to it, or cables?
Tensegrity.
Tensegrity.
Tensegrity, yeah.
Tensegrity, which is perhaps in relation to dematerialization, no?
Yeah, we could do that also.
And fifth, that would be the group of ornaments.
Ornamentation, yeah.
Ornamentation and perfection, yeah. Ornament, pattern, and perfection. So, I mean, so students would be invited to choose one of these families, and then continue perhaps to work on one sketch or one draft, which we could discuss in our next meeting.
Yes, I think it would be reasonable to leave it to the students, and so that they can just formulate the groups and see where their prototype contributes the best. We can float these 5 families and give them a little chance of interaction. And then, of course, we can work on these 5 prototypes, have some conceptual ideas, and maybe at that point we can introduce the industry experts so that they could just also give insights regarding execution.
And Gerion, could you send around your chart? I think it would be extremely helpful to give your colleagues the opportunity to choose the families. So
yes,
I already did so. Yeah.
It's already there. Yeah, Gerion did.
It's already around. And well, so perhaps we should also look at somebody who could send us back the feedback from the group. Who are the group members actually? Is there anybody who could do that?
Yeah, we can do that.
You mean to say, sorry? Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that. We are there in that group where all these students are together. Girion has already posted the final sheet.
Okay.
So what we can do is we can post these topics there. Okay, these are the broad areas. So whosoever wants to join which group, so they can join one group that can be given to them. So they decide among themselves in the group and what final groups they make as per their consent, and then we can put forward to you.
Ma'am, I think Axel is also suggesting today's feedback, like if we have given on something one-on-one.
Okay.
Is that what you meant, Axel?
Yeah, just to be sure that the group formation works.
Yeah, we can do that. Apart from the family that we have identified, these broad 5 categories, what were like, subtle nuances of each and what kind of discussion came up and certain points of feedback, we could just, we'll make that like a single sheet and send it across.
Okay. So my only question was if we could merge 3 and 4, so dematerialization and tensegrity into one, which then would be a kind of intelligence or a structural engineering approach allowing to reduce matter because you have cables, because you have a device, you have bolts. And so I saw there something very modern also, you know, to use stone in an unexpected way, that you get out of the stone suddenly structural property which hadn't been discovered. So I see in dematerialization and tensegrity kind of engineering approach and something innovative and surprising, which is very different from the tectonics of massive stereotomy. And it's also different from textile enclosure. And it's also different from ornament and pattern and carving something, a wonderful surface into stone, which makes the stone more delicate and shiny and perfect. So I think just to get it into, perhaps we can have 4 groups, and taking away matter and adding a structural performance. For me, it's rather one group. So then we I think I see pretty much Rosa and well, also who was it? Amruta in this approach, and also the dematerialized stupa dome, and I think there's a whole group, and I don't know, even perhaps Pranjal is working on this engineering side.
Yeah, so there are certain overlaps. Like Pranjal is working with the idea of enclosure as well as the engineering
Yes,
aspect.
of course, yeah, in the same time. So well, it's up to you, of course, in which company you see yourself, and just you have to feel comfortable about it.
It
But
would be good to let them also think a bit about it.
it's just I'm just saying that we can get along with 4 groups instead of 5.
Yeah. That we can surely do. We can definitely merge dematerialization with tensegrity, because we are talking about lightness, which is opposite of massiveness.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I.
Yes. So I see Amruta, Oshin, Christiane, Oza, Manas, and Nanandu, 5 of them in dematerialization, tensegrity,
Yes.
lightness.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was a very productive.
Yeah, I think we had a long and rigorous and fruitful session, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks.
When do we meet again? Can we fix this as well?
Yes, we need to do that. So once these groups are formulated, they'll work conceptually on commonalities and come up with one prototype each.
No, exactly.
So how much time do you think we should give you, Giryan, Oshin, Prashant, to work in groups to come up with first stage idea?
Yeah, I think it shouldn't be too long, because now all the basic ideas are there. And what we would need is perhaps a draft, a common sketch, or an idea. And so I would suggest to do that. I don't know if you have time on mid-July. Is that possible?
Yeah, mid-July should be possible.
How about 15th or 16th, 15th, 16th?
I'll just have a look at the calendar. 15th is which day?
15th would be Thursday, like today.
Narinda ma'am, I think it works for us. We have registrations that day. Na? There are no classes as such on 15th.
No, ma'am. Classes.
So we can fix 15 July?
Yes, we can. I think so. We can go ahead.
Yeah, that works. We can have it in the same time or whatever works for you. Second half Indian time.
Same time is great. Yeah, it would be
okay. All right. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So I put it here.
Okay.
And it's okay via Zoom, right, Smriti?
Yeah. It will be via Zoom. No confusion now.
Yeah,
And,
sorry for that. I don't know what happened, but I was kicked out of Google. Perhaps I.
No, in fact, even Raman is not able to do that. He's the one who is hosting. He was hosting us all on Google. So yeah, some problems happen. That's all right. Okay, then let's meet on 15th then.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody. It was really fascinating.
And you could also let us know one more day where we would like to present the building inventories. We have done some work on that as well. Whatever.
Yeah, that's good. And also, please just not to lose. I mean, we have Gerion's chart. Thanks for this again, but we should also upload it to the EAMC portal. So to publish your work in the end and to. Thank you.
All right, I'll discuss the slot for the inventories later, and I'll see you all on 15th. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Smith. Thank you, Narendra.
Thank you.
And Girion, it's a fantastic job. Thanks again. It's really nice. All right.
Welcome.
See you. Bye.
Okay.